Hello again and welcome back. I am McSnazzi and today we are back in Planet Zoo for another episode of Ranger Park Zoo. We're starting the series up once again and we're going to do a very cool build today. But before we get into that, please consider subscribing down below. It's completely free and it really does help out the channel. Now to talk a little bit about today's build, we're going to be building a big elephant enclosure. Now I've wanted to do an elephant enclosure for a long time now, and I've sort of had this area sort of fenced off for it for a while, but we haven't really got to it until now, but I'm really happy with the results and we'll get into that shortly. There are timestamps down in the description below if you are not into the time-lapse section and would like to just skip straight to the live playthrough where we talk through the finished build and walk around in first person. There's chapters on the episodes now and you can check that out in the description. Click on those if you just want to click a link straight to where it starts. Now also there is the link to the most previous episode of Ranger Park Zoo where we do the polar bears, probably my favorite build that I've done in the park, probably besides the grizzly bear enclosure that's also right next to it that we did in the park. I'll link that down below as well, but you can also find the playlist there for this whole series if you're new to the channel and are just checking out Ranger Park Zoo for the first time. We will finish the series. I am adamant about that. We're gonna get this one done, and we still got a lot to do in the park. And next episode I think I want to do sea otters, a little bit of a sneak peek now of what next episode could be, one of the new aquatic animals as well. And I think I may add in the penguin center that we made in one of my recent Planet Zoo videos from last week or a couple weeks ago. We might just take the blueprint and put it into the park. But let's talk a little bit about what we're doing on screen. You've seen me sort of do the layout of the enclosure so far. We put up the fences, we did a little bit of terrain work for the elephants. Now we are going to build the big elephant house or elephant barn. Looks more like a barn. It's just one of those big structures where the elephants will hang out in, where they'll get their baths in, where they'll sleep and stuff like that. If this was a real zoo, in real life, all that stuff would happen. But in the game, it's just a place for them to hang out. It's a hard shelter, and we also have some beds in there for them. Now when it comes down to making African animal exhibits, specifically, you know, the savanna animals, kind of like the African elephant, which we are doing right now, the sort of enclosures are a little more flat. You know, they're not as pretty to the naked eye as necessarily some of the like the grizzly bear enclosures that we've done, polar bears, where you can put in mountains, lots of nice rock work and things like that. It's a little more flat, a little more savanna-like, so that's sort of what we go for here. So doing a lot of the terrain work at the beginning during that time lapse, I cut a little bit of it out because it's just making sort of a flat area with slight terrain dips and dives and, you know, increases here and there. But really the main part of this build is going to be this barn structure that we're making here, and I really do like how it turns out. Very generic, very realistic, something that would definitely be built for an elephant because it has to be huge for them to all fit inside of it. So it does work out in the end, but it's a pretty plain structure. But I really like how it looks because I'm more into the realism of the this project and the zoo in general, to make it look like you could just look at this on Google Maps or something when the finished product's done and we take a couple overhead shots or something. I plan on making like a zoo pamphlet, a zoo map graphic when we finish the series. Maybe I'll do one here soon as sort of this stopping point, not really stopping point, but as sort of a threshold of maybe like episode 20, we'll make a pamphlet or a zoo map of the zoo so far, like a little fun graphic, and I'll post it on the channel, show it in one of the videos, probably the 20th video episode. If I end up doing that. Not making any promises now, but definitely when we finish the project I'll want to do something like that. But really it's just going to be for this barn. We're going to mirror everything on each side. I kind of wanted to go for a little bit of an overhang where the elephants could get their feed if this was like real life, so they could get a little bit of shade under this barn, so with those little overhangs at the beginning and sort of the back of the building as well. And I kind of like the idea of putting their food troughs there. I don't actually do that when we do it in the time lapse. I may go back and fix that in the live play, because I am recording this time-lapse voiceover before I do the live walkthrough, because I do have quite a bit of stuff to do before I record the live walkthrough off camera to sort of for the guests and just sort of finish up the habitat itself. But going back to talking about like the general idea of this enclosure, I kind of wanted to go for a very big area for the elephants. I understand that they need a lot of space, and in a lot of those real life zoos and things like that, they don't get as much space as they would necessarily need. So I kind of wanted to go against that theory and make Ranger Park Zoo have a really cool, really big elephant enclosure. And I think we established in the end they got lots of places to walk around and put lots of cool enrichment items down, and man, are they loud. They are very loud. You'll hear in the live playthrough, but they just I don't know what the word is, but they like use their trunk and make a big horn noise, and you know, the elephant noise. I'm not going to try to reenact it or make the noise right now, but you'll hear they are very loud. But I hope that means they're happy or something, because they do have a ton of enrichment items to make them happy. But as we finish up the zoo, I'll talk a little bit more about future plans for Ranger Park Zoo. Of course, we're going to do a lot of things that I've talked about before but still haven't got to, like the African elephants were step one of that. In this area, I kind of want to make this area, and I'll talk a little bit about this more in the live playthrough. I want to make this area more of an African area. We already have the African safari. The lions are also right by here as well. We have the African elephants now. I'd like to put the hippos in. Never done hippos in this game yet. I'm really looking forward to doing hippos and the great apes as well, making an ape house over on the other side of the Savannah Safari. And this, I'll show this a little more when we actually go in the live playthrough so you guys can understand it a little better. But if you're familiar with the park, you probably know what I'm talking about right now. But with that being said, I know that's not super exciting things, so I'm sure lots of other YouTubers have done this, but for this project we still haven't done it yet, and I still haven't done it personally in the game as well. So of course I'm going to do a little bit of this aquatic pack stuff. I also want to do like an ape house and the hippos as well. But I think for sure next episode is going to be sea otters. I love otters, and there's this really cool otter exhibit at my home zoo that I visit that's near my house, and they have just this, it's very simple, very small, but it's just one of those little things you walk in on at the beginning of the park, and I think it's perfect, and I think I have a good spot of where to put it. But I want to do sea lions too, and then we'll copy and paste the penguins in as well. And I think there's another animal in the aquatic pack that I'm missing, but we'll put them in probably as well. But here we're making the barn a little bit taller because apparently it wasn't big enough. The elephants needed a little more room, even though I thought it was already pretty big. But I mean, scale ends up being good in the end. And I put another door at this sort of side entrance here, if you consider this right here the front. So there's a lot of doors for the elephants to go in and out of, and I think it works great for them. Very generic, very realistic looking sort of elephant house. Elephant barn, whatever you want to call it, but it blends in with the environment once we add a little bit of vegetation here in a second, and you guys will see that in just a moment. But they added some new things to the game since we've last been in Ranger Park Zoo, and I kind of went around and added a little bit of those education areas with the speakers or whatever they added, the education people where they can do talks at these certain places. I added those into some places. There'll be a little more of that done later because I think we need to add one for every exhibit, which I have not done. And there's a lot of little things I want to do around the zoo to sort of clean things up, add a little more detail, and just make it better, because there's a lot of alerts, as you can see on the left side of the screen here, that I need to take care of since we haven't been in the zoo in a couple months, and a lot in the game has changed since then. So I think I'll do a live stream or two taking care of some of that stuff. You guys can check that out. There's a link to my Twitch channel in the description below. I stream a lot of different stuff there. It's not always Planet Zoo, City Skylines, stuff like that. So if you're more looking for that specifically, that's not what you're gonna necessarily find all the time. Sometimes it's gonna be up there, but you can watch the VODs if we ever end up doing just a Planet Zoo stream or something. You can see it on there for sure. But I plan on doing that in the future because there's a lot of small things I just want to fix up in this zoo, and this zoo's kind of my baby, so I want to make it good. And once we finish it, I want to put it out on the workshop for all you guys to enjoy and just go and explore yourselves. And it's just one of those big projects that I want to get finished, and I want it to be perfect, at least as perfect as I think I want it to be. Because we never finished the first project, Timber Gorge Zoo. If you've been subscribed for a while and you're familiar with that series got a little too big on us, a little too high detail, got a little framey, and it just wasn't as good because it was sort of the first few months the game was out, me playing around in it, and you learn a lot during the first few months of playing the game. So that's when we started up this series last June. So this series is a little more polished, a little more realistic, and I think it's a lot better personally. And the production quality has definitely went up a lot since the Timber Gorge series, if you're familiar with that. But I want to finish this series. We'll finish it, and maybe we'll have some more one-off builds like that Polk Penguin Conservation Center that I released a week ago, if you've seen that. Maybe some more one-off cool builds that are a little less realistic but more extravagant and cool, and just something special. So I'll mix those in as well. And if you guys haven't seen the city skyline stuff, I've started a new series where we're gonna build a city in an area in there. If you are not familiar with the game or you don't want to check it out, I understand, but I'm just trying to add a few more games onto the channel than just Planet Zoo. And I'm excited for that, very excited for that, and very excited to release more Planet Zoo videos as well. So stay tuned on the channel for all of that. We're going to jump into the live play here in just a second, and I'll show you guys the final build and all the stuff that I've done off camera. So I'll let the music play for now, and you guys can watch the rest of the time lapse. If you want to skip ahead, it's in the description below, and I'll see you guys in the live portion in just a second. Alright everybody, welcome back to the live portion of the episode where we get to show off the elephant build in its glory. Here we're starting at the Savannah Safari, a build we did a long time ago, but it still stands up till this day. But the elephants are just over here. There we go, we get a couple glimpses of it. And I've done a lot of work off camera that I'll show in a little bit, but let's start by going this way towards the elephant sign, and this is pretty much the sign for the enclosure, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. Clean, got to use that nice elephant sculpture piece. And let's go check out the enclosure itself. So we go in through here and we can take a look at the elephants hanging out in their brand new enclosure, which looks awesome. One of them's playing with the little bowling pin out there. That's fun. And see, I told you they're extremely loud if you heard that. I think I turned down the game volume a little when I do these live portions, but in my ears that was extremely loud. But let's check out what we did over here. So basically I took what we did in the Savannah Safari. If you haven't seen that video, you can check it out in the playlist below. It's a very good build. But we took basically the canopy that we did over there and I ran it all along this path again. So the guests have a little bit of shade over here since it's a little more wide open, less wooded due to the elephants liking that, grassland savanna sort of thing. Also ran this fence along, and we have one of these new talk points for an educator to talk to the elephants through here. But just lots of viewing angles for guests that want to check out the elephants, and I think it's great. Bunch of education as well, and you get nice good views of the elephants, and it looks like they really enjoy their enclosure. They keep making noises out there, and I'm really happy with how this build turns out. Not super duper crazy because the elephants don't like a lot of vegetation and all those kinds of things. So you can really go a long way by doing something very simple. Just a few trees here and there like the African savanna, and you basically got a perfect looking elephant habitat. And the barn looks great over there as well. We can go check that out a little closer now. Basically this whole path runs around the whole thing, but this is pretty much the edge of the park this way, or the edge of the zoo. I had to add a guest spawner over here because the guests were just not getting back this far, much like I had to do over by the Australian Odyssey. If you haven't seen that episode, you can check that one out in the playlist below as well, but that's a build on the other side of the park, basically parallel to where we are now. And I had to add a guest spawner over there as well. But elephants chilling in here. I really enjoy what we were able to do with this, and this just runs around. So let's jump out of first person. Now we are in overhead camera here as well. We can check out the build from above. Actually, I didn't talk about the pond over here. So we did this nice waterfall feature. I love how this looks. And they swim in this pond, in this little lake, and they love it. The little watering hole, kind of like an African watering hole. And this looks great, except for all the poop that's everywhere because, well, this zoo's getting so big that a lot of the zookeepers are having trouble keeping up, even though I have probably like 40 zookeepers hired now in this zoo. They just keep going. They just keep pooping as well. I think that was an issue when the Australia DLC came out, and I don't know if it ever got fixed. That's sort of when I took a little break, so I'm not entirely sure. But what we did off camera was we added all this vegetation, this little shaded area, all these fences. We kind of brought these fences along here, the same fences that we use in the African Savannah Safari episode. We reused them to sort of keep the theme here. I added more trees this way to sort of block off this giraffe house. We might add a build here later, I'm not entirely sure. Right here I've sort of quartered this off to be a little African eatery that we'll make in a future episode. And right here I want the hippos as well. So we'll put the hippos next to the elephants, but I think this is the end because this is the border of the zoo, and I can only build up to here, so I think this is the end of the park this way. And we'll bring this road to sort of make it realistic in the end. And we'll do that probably on a stream as well. But this is pretty much the build itself. I hope you guys did enjoy this episode. I really enjoyed making it, getting back into Planet Zoo. Also made this planter here with some live trees. Just looks nice and really cuts up the path a little so that you get a little more of that cozy feeling, that cozy zoo feeling. And I think the guests really enjoy it, and I really enjoy it as well. So I hope you guys did enjoy the build. If you did, please leave a like down below. Consider subscribing if you aren't already so you can stay tuned to all of my videos. It's completely free and it really does help the channel out. Leave a comment if you have something to say, a suggestion for a future episode, or just want to say that you like the build or something about it. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll have more Ranger Park Zoo in the future. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.